haunting has gotten, over the years, from basic store-bought props to being almost professional.
Everybody's heard of like Halloween Horror Nights or Not Scary Farm, whatever. You just say it's like that, but like somebody has taken some of that and put that at their house. They built it in their driveway. They built it around the side of their house. It's really the whole next level of creating a pro experience, really.
You feel like you're in a castle, or as best as I possibly could in my front yard in Santa Clarita, California.
Home haunter is somebody who does a haunt out of their home, and they do it just simply for the love of doing it. They don't make any money from it. They don't, we just simply do it for the love of it.
These are like passionate art installations that are almost replacing trick-or-treating.
I think oftentimes if we can just inspire one person that's going to come through here someday that's going to say, that was the coolest thing ever. When I get a house of my own, I'm going to do that.
And happy Halloween.
I got a rock.
Very, very happy to have a special guest on the show this evening. I'm with Josh Quillin.
Quillin.
Quillin? Like a quill, like a pen.
So close.
Josh Quillin, I know. You are the creator of the Epic Home Haunt doc.
I am.
Yeah.
Well, one of. I mean, my wife deserves a fair amount of credit.
Okay.
For it. I don't deserve all the credit. But she,
Quillin couple. There we go. Well, that's awesome.
It was more of a joint effort. I mean, it was literally. I say it's us, right? So it's one of those things where like if she wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened, kind of a thing. Like she, was the assistant camera person. She was there taking notes during all the interviews. She was transcribing interviews. She, all that stuff. So it's really a pretty joint effort.
That's really awesome. How did you guys kind of fall into this thing? Did you have documentaries before this, or was this kind of like your first real big jump into it?
This is the first full feature. We've done a bunch of really terrible short films in the past.
I was watching some of those beforehand. Not saying they're terrible.
No, they're bad. So we were watching a bunch of really, really bad. We're doing really, really, really bad short films, and then working in like the corporate space. So we ran a studio in LA for a while, doing like corporate videos and event videos and things like that. And then we did the short films, and from there we kind of stumbled into the world of Halloween haunts. And then I learned a lot about documentary filmmaking from working at GoPro, making a lot of their short films, and that was where I learned how to interview. That's where I learned just a lot about documentary filmmaking, because everything that they do on their channel is documentary filmmaking. And so we were pumping out, a video every 10 days or so. So it was one of those, like, you just had to keep making content really, really fast, and you just learned a lot real quick.
Yeah, and you might as well keep using these talents that you've learned,
Yeah, you might as well. Yeah. Especially to help out a community that, like, really needs, some form of positive something out there in the world.
For sure. Yeah, I was going to ask you, would you consider yourself a home haunter, or was it something that you kind of were passionate about earlier on?
When I was a kid, I used to build haunts, but I mean, they were like, your classic, just open the garage and like staple black trash bags to the walls and then consider that a haunt. Or, like I remember, I think the first haunt I ever did was, God, how old was I? It was maybe like 10. It's 9 or 10, and I took my room And I remember I lit it all black light. I made a little maze. I had like the case for my saxophone. I had taken that out and made it a coffin and rigged it up to wiring. So if you like pulled a lever, it would open up. Stuff like that, right? When I was like real little, and I like forced my parents to go through.
Did you have a soundtrack or any kind of music playing while you did it?
There was. I don't remember what it would have been. I can only imagine what would that have been. Probably like Halloween CD number 3.
Right, the orange and black.
One that, Right, exactly. The one you would play because you got it from Walmart and you'd play it every Halloween, outside of the trick-or-treaters. But we would do that, and then we'd moved and we would do a little bit more, and we slowly graduated to like, we got a fog machine and a strobe light, and I would actually be putting actual masks on and that kind of stuff. And then I don't know what happened. I think we just got super busy or what, but we stopped doing it. My parents still go a little all out for Halloween, but we never got as big as what's in the film. Never even close.
For sure. The people that are in that are pretty like unique. Like they really have like a dedication for this stuff.
It's pretty insane. I mean, I never imagined that what they're building, people are creating at their houses. I mean, no thought in my mind ever crossed. Words are hard. Yeah. No thought ever crossed my mind. There we go. That people were actually doing what they're doing. And when we met Chris and Gina from Hollywood Haunter and saw what they were doing, it was one of those like, wow, these two people are crazy and they go all out for Halloween and this is insane. And then we very quickly learned, no, there's a lot of people who do this. It's not just Chris and Gina from Hollywood Haunter who are doing it. There's an entire community. And then that, you just pull on that string and it just starts to unravel. And it rolled into, 6 years, I think. We had 6 years. What year is it? 2019? Yeah, roughly 6 years till now.
That's crazy. And I know like there's been a few Haunter documentaries that have come out, but if you're saying you've done this for 6 years, you guys were on the beginning of this forefront. They all just kind of started popping and quality being what it was. Some of them are worse than others,
Sure. I mean, it's a super niche, haunts in general is a super niche topic, and then you take home haunts, which is like a niche within a niche. So it's there's not a lot of content being made. Right. About that niche, and so the stuff that's out there is generally really independent, really low budget. I mean, we were super low budget. You know what I mean? The only reason why it looked the way it looked is because I had the filmmaking experience to know enough to get myself in trouble, right? To know enough to get the door open to go, I think we can do this. And then we ended up doing it. But
I mean, there's drone shots in this. There's a lot of really cool shots. But I'm sure like maybe not 6 years ago you got drone shots. Maybe like 3 years ago.
Yeah. No, it's funny if you when you watch the doc, you can actually see us experimenting because we did 2 years, year and a half, 2 years of research and planning, and talking with haunts. I mean, there was a good, 6-7 months of just contacting. At one point, I think we were talking to 9 or 12 different haunts all at the same time. We were going to try to film all of them. We had literal maps planned out and stuff, and then we canned that year because our funding fell through. Oh, no. And that was because the genesis, you have to remember, the genesis from 6 years ago was this was a TV show. We actually had it financed from a producer to actually do this as a TV series. Okay. And that's, we were going to do 2 haunts per episode, 9 episodes, so 18 haunts total. And then sprinkle a couple little yard haunts in there, as like cut-tos for like a 2 or 3 minute cut-to if we needed to. And then all that funding fell through. My wife and I were like, man. And so we started researching it as a film. And then that's when we decided, screw it, we'll self-finance it. Yeah. Which my credit cards are very, very high right now. Because
the old Kevin Smith way, right?
That's exactly what I was saying. It was very Kevin Smith. It was very like, okay, well, hopefully this makes money. And so far we haven't made almost anything, but it's fine because the film's done. It's out there and it's getting, really good positive feedback.
You guys are getting really good distribution, and you have a 4K version on iTunes coming out soon.
It's already out.
It's already out.
It is out. It is 100% out right now. We shot the whole film in 4K from the beginning. So we spent a bit of money up front to do that. The extra storage, better lenses, better cameras, that kind of stuff. Knowing that, okay, in 3 or 4 years when this comes out, 4K is going to be standard, so we have to be shooting in that now
For sure, yeah.
in order to release it then. And I'm glad we did, because if you when we watched the HD version, on Amazon and things, it's like, oh, this looks really good. And then I remember, I had the 4K file, and I know it looked good, but when I downloaded it from iTunes and played it on our TV, I was like, okay, no, this actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Like shockingly good for the gear we used. Because you got to think, I don't know, probably a third of the film is shot on a GoPro Hero 4.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not, we're not using RED cameras. We're not using $50,000 cinema cameras. We're using a, $2,500 Sony A7S. That's our main camera.
Right. But I mean, it looks great. I mean, for what you guys had at the time and what we have right now, like, you guys are just on the cusp,
Yeah. And going back to what I was saying before, so if you watch the film from beginning to end, you can see how we were experimenting with shooting the 2016 season and how that changed into the 2017 season when we went back and reshot. So if you look in 2016, there's a bunch of this very classic front-mounted camera on people as they're walking through. And the shots were okay, but as you go into 2017, you can see that we had time to actually process that footage and start messing with it and realized, this isn't the best. And we just completely ditched it in 2017. And then all of a sudden in 2017, a drone shows up.
Right.
It's like, we got some extra cash and a drone got bought. So it was just like, well, now we have a drone.
Which is great for those aerial shots.
But...
Like the shots where you get to see literally overhead of haunts. And I think a lot of people don't really get that aspect of a haunt whenever you actually kind of see where the front yard is, where the tree kind of obstructs the haunt,
Right.
Very cool stuff.
There was only 2 shots we were actually able to use the drone, which was really unfortunate because of, FAA laws. But it was nice. It was nice being in it.
Yeah. It seems like they're out in California, everything is pretty tight. The streets are tight. I mean, they even look like that in the documentary for reasons why they couldn't even have the haunts for a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, especially if you go to Rotten Apple and some of the Rotten Apple and Boot Hill in particular. Are very, very small. Burbank, I don't know if you've ever been to Burbank, but it's an old 40s, 50s town, and the streets are tiny. 2 Priuses fill the street basically, and
then the cars on each side are parked, for parking.
Right.
So it's tight.
And so then you add 150 people in line, and this entire thing it packs out real fast.
Yeah.
And on the night that we filmed them in 2016, some dance group showed up doing flash mobs to Michael Jackson.
Oh, God.
And it was just mob chaos, right, when we were filming. And it was funny because I'm like, oh, great, a flash mob. And I'm like, well, I guess we can't film for the next hour.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of copywritten music.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that, yeah.
So we were just kind of dead in the water, just watching them dance.
What a waste.
Make a movie here.
So what made you guys, did you guys have connections with, what was the convention before Midsummer Scream?
So I used to run a really, really terrible podcast called Theme Park Talk.
Okay. I think we all had a theme park podcast at one point in time in our lives.
Everybody did. So we started one called Coaster Heaven or Coaster something. In 2007, whenever literally the year after podcasts first started.
Yes.
And got a ton of traction. And then I remember some theme park guy was like, this doesn't make any sense. You're not talking about coasters, you're talking about theme parks. And I was like, oh yeah. And so we took Theme Park Talk because it was available because nobody else was doing it. And then did that for a while. And then that became a video series, which is still online. You can actually still check it out. And then through that, I met Rick West. And Rick and I became friends, and then flash forward 3-4 years later, maybe even more than that, he was with the group of people who started Scare LA. And so they did that for a number of years. So our first, when we were researching the film, was year 2 or 2 maybe of Scare LA, maybe year 3. So that's how far back it is. We're in year 4 now, I think, of Midsummer Scream.
Yeah.
And there was 1 or 2 years before that for Scare LA, and that was a year into researching. So, yeah, I mean, that just shows it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was where we went around, Chris and Gina, introduced us to all their haunt friends. And, we met with Preston and Diane, which was really funny because we went up to Preston and Diane and went, hey, we're filming this documentary. And they had apparently just been asked to be in another documentary.
Oh, wow.
What was the one? It was the Haunters, the Art of the Scare. They had just been asked to be in that doc. So they were kind of like, okay, like who are all these people coming out of the woodwork to, wanting to be in? So they were a little sketchy. And then they ended up saying yes. Then we met Greg and Pam Packard that same year. And I think that was the first. No, that was. I don't even think they were doing a haunt at that, or they had just started doing a haunt at that point. Because when we filmed them, it was year 3 in 2016. So yeah, they would have done year 1. They would have had just done year 1 or about to do year 1.
Yeah.
Because when we were looking at which haunts to do, and a lot of people have asked, like, how did you choose your haunts? And it's like, well, there were like 18 of them that we were going through, but we came down to those 4 because it was Rotten Apple was always going to be a part of it because they're the old school rock that's been there for a long time. And they change their theme every year, and it's insane and it's massive and awesome. Yeah. And then Restless Souls Manor, Greg and Pam Packard, they came on because they were the newbies. They were only in, like I said, year 3 when we filmed them, so it's like they're doing it on the level of Rotten Apple, but they're brand new. So it was like, well, I definitely want to get that perspective.
Yeah.
Plus, I really love their story. And then Boot Hill was a yard haunt, but it was sort of a over the top yard haunt. Like they're a haunt, but they're not enclosed. It's just in the front driveway. Right. It doesn't actually go into the garage. There's no walls. Except to like close off the yard. There's no walls. So it's more of a yard haunt than it is a traditional haunt. So it was like, okay, well, there's our yard haunt.
Yeah.
And then Beware the Dark Realm was just like, holy mother of God, there's a giant castle. And they're just awesome people as well. So that was they just kind of fit in perfectly. And then it ended up working out. It ended up there was a lot of happy accidents where it ended up like, oh, these were just the perfect 4 people to be in this film. And, little things started happening that just were kind of happy accidents along the way.
So whenever you guys got this out, I know it kind of came out recently. Is that something that you guys wanted to do that, or did you want to wait till October, or do you think it's good to have it out now and let it build traction to October?
Well, we released October of last year on Amazon.
Okay.
So the distribution was a little clunky because we were trying to get it done and ready for October of 2018. We didn't want to wait till October of 2019 because we would have basically just sat on the film for almost a full year and nobody would have seen it. And then our company, Saga Studios, made a distribution deal with Amazon. So we were able to direct distribute with them. And so we ended up doing that first as sort of an exclusive distribution deal, and then went the iTunes route. And that took 3 or 4 months for iTunes to get it, screen it, accept it, get it in, get it to be published. And that finally came out in mid-April. So it took
That's how I found out about it.
Was through iTunes. Okay.
It was through the iTunes, yeah. Well, actually, do you know who Pumpkin Rot is?
No.
So Pumpkin Rot, you check out his blog. He's a photographer. He kind of just does his own like home haunts and just kind of has does like a lot of photography and stuff, and lives out in like Maine or somewhere. But he just kind of posts just a lot of random Halloween things that he's found, and he posted about your guys' show. That's how I found about it.
Oh, nice. Really, that's rad.
Yeah. So you're right. It is kind of a niche community, of haunters and horror fans that kind of spread these things. But I feel like it's gaining traction for you. I guarantee this Halloween you're definitely going to see some numbers.
I hope so. It's one of those where it's interesting the way it's rolling out. So like Netflix passed on the film. Really? Yeah, which is funny. They're the reasoning we got back was they want to focus on more genre heavy topics. And I was like,
what?
More genre heavy than Halloween?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, okay. So anyway, so they passed, which is fine. Hulu's currently screening it right now, but we're waiting. There's a large waiting game with them because Disney just got full control over Hulu, and they're doing a complete reorg of the company. So all we're hearing back from them is like, we're going to watch it, but things are chaotic right now. So we're just sort of waiting for them to come online. But I mean, it's done okay. It hasn't done super well, but it's interesting. The thing that we're finding is that, we reach out to haunters on Instagram. We'll DM a bunch of them, one at a time, just like, hey, have you seen the film, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I would say 90% of the time, it's no, I've never even heard of it. Yeah. So when at the screening we just did, we just did the first theater screening in Santa Ana in Southern California at the Frida, which was bizarre to see the film on a big screen.
Yeah.
It was great and it was super fun, but it was one of those things where it's like, you're watching a film, a thing you had in your head, and it just is all of a sudden up on a giant, 40-foot screen, and there's people.
Where hundreds of people, right? I mean, like, that place had to fit a decent amount.
Yeah, it fit 205. I think we had 120, 130 people, something like that, in the theater. So I mean, there's a good amount of people there.
That's cool.
But it was just bizarre seeing it up there. And then to go back really quick to sidetrack on using equipment that isn't like crazy studio grade. It looked amazing. It was one of those things where a DSLR with decent lenses and GoPro Hero 4 footage processed properly was great on the big screen. Yeah. So this is one of those, I'm constantly, I mean, you were watching some of my YouTube stuff. I constantly harp on, people like, hey, just use the gear you have. You don't need this big stuff. Like, learn how to use it, and you can make cool stuff with it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Side note.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So we did the screening, and that was awesome. But one of the things we were talking about there was like, the inner circle of LA haunters knows about the film, but getting it outside of there is interesting. It's a little difficult, and I think it's definitely because it's a niche within a niche. It's only available on Amazon and iTunes, and it's not direct streaming anywhere. You have to rent or purchase it.
Which is funny. That's what I did. I went to Amazon and I went to play it. I was like, oh, it's on Amazon. And it did the thing where it's like, you got to buy this. Like, there was 5 bones. So I had to go on the website, throw 5 bones at it. And then it became active on the streaming app.
Yeah, that was one thing that we noticed was a problem when we first released, is we had a lot of people come messaging us like, hey, it doesn't show up on my Apple TV. And I'm like, I know. You got to go to the website and you have to rent it there, and then it'll show up on your Amazon account. It's a little wonky. So we had a few distribution hiccups right at the beginning, but everybody who's seen it generally tends to like it. We have 1 2-star review, and I see who you are.
I know you.
It was really funny too, because the review was like, I wish it was. I thought it was going to be more tutorials or something like that, and I was all
like, I didn't learn anything, and you're like, okay.
I'm like, that's what YouTube's for. Whatever. Everybody else enjoys the film. But it's great. I mean, the community really, really likes it. And that's, we made it for the community. We wanted to make a film that the community could be proud of, that they could look to and point towards and go, hey, that's us. That's why we do what we do. And show other people why they love Halloween so much. And I've actually heard, what was the podcast? Parks and Cons just did an episode. They reviewed the film. It was really, really nice. But they mentioned that they want to sit their family down and basically watch it and go, look, this is why we're crazy about Halloween.
Yeah.
Like, we can't explain it, but this explained it well enough that this is why we're crazy about it.
Right. You guys see us wearing shirts with pumpkins on it all throughout the year, and it's just like, what? It's like, here, just watch this and you'll get it.
Well, exactly. And that was the reason why we made it. We didn't make it to make a ton of money. We knew we were never going to make $1 bajillion, right? That was never going to happen.
Right. It's a fandom thing.
It's a fan thing, right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if we make our money back, I'll be happy. Please, God, help us make our money back.
And I mean, that's what this is. I mean, like, I'm from this is in Orlando, right? So we're on the East Coast, and we have Halloween Horror Nights over here. We have Mickey's Not So Scary.
I've never been to Halloween Horror Nights in Florida, and I'm desperate to go.
You got to come out here. We got Mike Aiello, one of the creators of Halloween Horror Nights. I used to work with him. He's a really great guy, and I'm sure if he checks out your doc, he will love it. So I will definitely spread the word. This is what this podcast is for.
That would be amazing. I think his wife has seen it, actually, because I direct messaged Mike when it first came out, and his wife liked it.
Summer, yeah.
He hasn't liked it or said anything about it, but his wife did.
Oh, no. I'm sure he would definitely take the time to watch it.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'll nudge this podcast his way, Nice.
Yeah, no, Mike's one of those it's like, growing up in LA and being involved in the film industry and stuff like that, I don't generally get weirdly starstruck, but like I'll be walking around Disneyland and Tony Baxter goes by and my brain explodes. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, that's Tony Baxter.
Right.
And like the attraction nerd in me is just like, like that's who I geek out about. So like Mike Aiello is one of those guys where I'm like, okay, that's sort of one of my geek out guys, right? I see the work he does and I'm just like, okay. No, this guy.
And the great thing is he's super humble. He goes and talks to Moody over on your side of the country.
Yeah.
They work together and build some pretty cool stuff, man.
Mr. Werewolf Kane. Yeah. No, it's actually, so sorry, side note. So for Theme Park Talk, that old podcast, remember we were covering Halloween Horror Nights once. This is how non-starstruck I get with like normal people, right? Mm-hmm. We're at Halloween Horror Nights. It's during the what was Ozzy Osbourne's maze? What was that called?
Oh yeah,
whatever it was, whatever the maze was called. I can't remember what it was exactly called. And we're standing there waiting to go in to review it for news people. And my buddy, I'm just standing there like this. My buddy goes, "Look behind you." And I'm like, "Huh?" And I turn around and Ozzy Osbourne is standing like 5 feet behind me, just staring at us, just like zombie stare, just right there. And I went, "Huh." And then just turned back around. Like I was like, whatever, right? But then John Murdy walks by, and I'm like, that's John Murdy, like.
Yeah, that you can see where your fandom lies, truly.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, it's cool. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. So like we have people on this side of the world that like you said, like if it wasn't for the social media like of just knowing people through Twitter and stuff to kind of connect to what Midsummer Scream is and everything that's going out there on in California. I mean that is where a lot of these, animatronics and the stuff that do go to the Halloween spirit stores and stuff are really getting created and made. So it's cool to see that stuff on the ground floor. I know it's still kind of small as a show, but they're trying. Like things are coming up and getting bigger every year.
Are you talking about Midsummer Scream being small? Midsummer Scream is huge now.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we've been going since year one, right? Mm-hmm. And year one, I have video of it. There's actually video of it in the doc. There's wide shots of the aisles, and there's just, 40, 50 people walking by. But there's large gaps in space.
Yeah.
And if you look, I didn't film a whole lot from last year, but I have some footage of last year where it was bumper to bumper people. You couldn't get through. Mm-hmm. And this year, the amount of space they just announced that they have is just mind-boggling. It's the entire Los Angeles or Long Beach Convention Center, I think, is what they posted. Something like that. It's huge. It's absolutely massive, the amount of space they have this year.
So that team that does the entrance every year are just going to be crying their eyes out this year.
That's Diana Preston and Greg and Pam. It's all of the guys from our haunt dog, because they're all from Cal Haunts. That's the other cool thing about Southern California is that they've got all these different haunt groups. So there's SoCal Valley Haunters and there's Cal Haunts. Those are the two big ones. Mm-hmm. And all the people from our docs are members of one or both. And Cal Haunts does the entrances to Midsummer Scream every year. And I didn't have footage of last year's, but it started off with nothing, which is black drapes, and then they did what was in the film, which was the archway with the spider webs and the headless horseman that rises up. Mm-hmm. Last year, they built a full walkthrough, like life-size Frankenstein's castle, full laboratory, full Frankenstein that actually rose up to the lightning and it moves, full animatronics.
Oh my god!
They did projection mapping on models of windmills to make it look like fire off in the distance on these. It was insane.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what they're doing this year.
I was gonna say it has to get to a point where it gets so big, like you said, they have their haunt as well. Is it to the point now where they just were like, well, we're getting a budget, so we have Team A, Team B, like we're at the house.
No, and it's the same group of like 20 people.
Really? Wow.
And it's crazy that you see what they're doing for like Midsummer Scream with these giant things, but that's when all of them come together. Then they all split up individually and go do their haunts, mm-hmm. which are 2,000 square foot insanity. So the passion they have for Halloween and for the haunted attraction, art form as it is, because they really are. One of the things that we talk about in the doc is, actually, I don't know if it made it into the doc, but like when Ted and I were doing the interview, we were describing them as pop-up art exhibits, basically, which is what they are. Yeah. They're not. They're art installations. They're not. I mean, they're haunts, but they're really like 1 or 2 weekend pop-up art installations that are kind of there and then they're gone.
Right.
And around the country, I don't know how much is in Orlando, but like LA, there's pop-up art installations everywhere.
Right. Oh yeah, like they'll rent out a venue. Like I know they did the Slashback video thing out there, and like yeah, you're right. Like there's always like these photo shoot op things that like open, or Guillermo del Toro comes into the museum and puts out his little display of things for like a few months. Yeah, I mean it's nowhere near as much in Orlando over there, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. Now there are, however, where you are, there are a ton of haunts. There's actually we were just talking with a home haunter in Winter Garden.
Really?
Who apparently does a pretty big home haunt. Yeah, no, there's a fair amount of haunts in the Central Florida area, particularly around Orlando.
Okay, yeah, I know we have. There's the Petrified Forest and like some other ones like that. But yeah, like home haunts, I don't really know about. So I would love for you to give me kind of like a list. I'd love to connect with those people.
Yeah, I'll have to shout it out on like our Facebook pages or something and see if we can collate a list of Florida-based home haunts. Because I know Central Florida is a pretty big hub for that kind of stuff, and it's growing. I've noticed there's a few horror Halloween conventions, little small ones.
Yeah,
starting
Spooky Empire happens out here.
Yeah, Spooky Empire, which I think just moved to Tampa, right? They were in Orlando.
Yes, they're doing it in Tampa. They couldn't find anywhere around because they wanted to have it on Halloween weekend. So I think it was Tampa was like, yeah, we'll give you our entire convention center, and they're like, great.
Interesting. On Halloween weekend?
Yeah, and they got Bruce Campbell.
Actually gonna go?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I just figure it's funny because Midsummer Scream is perfectly placed, right? Because and they did it specifically to try to get the haunters to go because it's before they all have to go build, and it's far enough outside of Halloween that you can still do it. It's interesting because like
to do it on Halloween, right? Yeah.
On Halloween, right? You're instantly preventing the haunters from being able to go.
Yeah, that's kind of the sad point. Yeah, I know a lot of people in Orlando are kind of bummed.
You should call us. Spooky Empire. We'll help you.
Right.
For a small nominal consultation fee, we'll help you to plan your event.
Well, I can guarantee you that I know there's a lot of other haunter podcasts that listen to this show. So once we do this one, you're going to start getting hit up to get those shows, and by that point, I'm sure Spooky Empire and them they'll hear you.
There you go. I'm down. No, I mean it's one of the fun things, like the screening was so cool, and it's not like we made money, right? Like we bought the theater. I paid to rent out the theater and hold the event, with Horror Buzz and Midsummer Scream, just because we wanted to have basically a party for the community.
For sure.
Out. I mean, it took 7 months or whatever to be able to do it, but we did it.
Right.
And after that experience, I've already started racking my brain and going like, how can we do this other places in the country? Like, are there other little theaters? Like, I can't afford to do it every time, but if there's a theater who's just like, yeah, we'll screen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm down.
Whenever you finally get the price tag, you're like, you know what? Not as horrible as I thought it would be.
Yeah, let's do it. Like that's I mean, it's one of those films I really just want the community to see it. And we screened it for a few friends who are super into cosplay and Comic-Con and that kind of thing. And even they were gravitating towards it of like, okay, that film for them, they were saying Epic Home Haunts was exactly the way they feel about cosplay, but it's about attractions, and that they got it and they understood the love behind it, and they were able to show it to other people. They could show it to other people to explain their love for cosplay. But like, look, this is Halloween, but this is the exact same way we feel about cosplay.
Right. The only difference is they're wearing their haunt on their body. Like they're still crafting those costumes morning, noon, and night, months and months on end, and sweat and dedication, just like haunters are all year round for a week.
Exactly. Well, and that was that's part of the point of the film, right? Is it's like these people aren't crazies. They're not, people who are like damaged children who have some weird Halloween horror fetish or something.
Right.
They're just normal people who want to put on a cool show for their community, basically. And they all do it for free. They take donations. Like Scott Sibley from Beware the Dark Realm, he talks about in the doc, and it's no joke, he literally will wake up at 4 a.m. and there's food being left at his front door in April.
Yeah.
Because people have just gotten so used to, that's the place where we go donate canned food. So
you're the donation guy.
Yeah. But it's cool that they've become so known for a free, theme park level experience that is able to donate, for their community in Santa Clarita. They are the #1 donator of food for the entire month of October.
That's great.
For the
That's
food
crazy.
pantry there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So without them, the food pantry would literally not have the food they need to be able to give out. So the fact that they're not only able to entertain their community, bring their community together, but they're able to literally feed their community and do it for like, you know, I talked about this when at the screening. Scott, I remember 2017, the second year we filmed with them, he was literally walking around going, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, you know, we're going to do this here, we're going to do that here. Mm-hmm. And he went, but if I only had $300, I could do what I really wanted.
Yeah, like only $300. Like,
they're not spending thousands of dollars. It's a couple of $100 a year, if that, and that's their whole budget.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it shows in the documentary at one point, which I definitely want to talk to you about this event, is the flash flood that took away this haunt. You know, they're not going like, they're not going like, well, we're just gonna go buy more plywood and more walls. Like, that's whatever. It's like, no, we're gonna get as many people that will want to, you know, help out in the community, and we're gonna dig this stuff out of the dirt and salvage whatever we can. What was it like to? Did you get a call that like this flood had happened? Or did you know it was coming, and you're like, well, we're just gonna see how this plays out?
No, that was one of those quote unquote happy accidents. So for us, and the story of the film, it was a happy accident, right? For them, it was a not so happy accident. But I mean, for the narrative of the film, it was like, oh, okay, like, wow, we literally can now show these awesome people, and it's not like it was Boot Hill, right, where it's a small yard haunt. It was the largest haunt with the biggest, most advanced stuff got hit, and I think it was like 40% or 35% of their stuff is gone, just completely wiped out by this flash flood. And so we got a call, I don't know, it was like randomly like, hey, there was a flood, we can't get in, we're gonna go clean, blah blah. And I instantly went, take pictures, take video, take everything you can, because we're not in LA. I live in San Jose. I live 450 miles north of where they are. And so when we started the project, we lived in LA.
That's how long it's taken.
And then I got a job at GoPro and moved up north. And so, you know, I was just like, please take pictures, blah, blah. And then my wife and I were like, all right, well, we weren't planning to come down and film for another couple of weeks, but I guess we're driving down. And so we went down 2 weekends in a row to just film them, you know, taking stuff out of the dirt and cleaning flats and that kind of stuff. And it looks like we were there for like a half a day in the film, because it's like 4 minutes long or something like that.
Right, yeah.
But that was 48 hours.
My God.
Of filming, and
it looks so hot too. Like, it
was miserable. It was over 100 degrees. Well, it's in the high desert, right? So in LA, the high desert, it's like middle of summer. It was like 100 and I don't know, probably 105. Something like that. It was well over 100 degrees in the middle of the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, and we're just sitting out there with drones and stuff like that. And that was one of the few times I could actually use the drone, because it was, private property, far enough away from an airport. Right. So I was like, sweet. So I just used the drone a whole bunch. But yeah, that was devastating for them. And we missed, because the flood happened, and then they went out, and then they couldn't physically get access to park or do anything. So it was like, well, we can't come down until that happens. So they couldn't clean it out. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks until the waters receded and everything was gone. They were able to get in and like trump around a little bit, but they couldn't do anything. And the even crappier thing is, it was, I guess it was flooded and bad enough that it took so long to get all that fixed. A giant bee colony came in and built a hive.
Oh my God.
So everything got flooded downstream, and it's all piled up and just destroyed. And then this massive bee colony decides, oh, we're going to live here now.
Right.
And so there's a couple of pictures in the doc of them having to like have transported the bees or whatever they had to do.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So it was just like insane. But the awesome thing is that the community came together, and I think they set up a GoFundMe page and a bunch of other stuff, and just rallied behind them to try to get them, the things replaced that they needed replaced, and to have help. And they had probably, you can see it in the doc, probably 10, 15 volunteers every single weekend there.
Oh, that's great.
They'd drive up, they'd give their cars, and it's not close. Burbank to where they were in the high deserts, like an hour and a half long drive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There and back in 100+ degree weather, you know, middle of the summer. It's miserable. You're dirty. You're sweaty. And not only are you there early in the morning, they would get there at like 8 a.m. to start cleaning. And then at like 4 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon, they leave. They have to go back to their house and then unload everything.
Right. Yeah. Like that's the worst part is when it's nighttime now and you're back at the place. Now you have to unload all this crap in the dark.
And then go back the next day. And, you know, you look at Diane and Preston and I'm like, you know, they're both retirees.
Mm-hmm. Right, I know. I kept thinking that too. Like he has like the little, was it the sweat veil thing on the back of his hat and everything. And I'm just like, this poor man. Like he doesn't need to be doing any of this, but he is. He's out there because he loves it. He loves the community. You know. Yeah,
and that really, like I said, for us was this happy accident because we got to really show the dedication that the community and the Haunters have to creating this art form. That not even a giant flash flood that took shipping containers and washed them over a half a mile downstream. Like it was that powerful.
Yeah.
You know, there's the shot we cut to, which is supposed to be a shocking type shot where it says 3 months to Halloween. And then we just, you know, hard cut to that broken RV. Mm-hmm. That RV wasn't stored broken. The water picked it up and threw it into a tree. So we talked to the owner of the RV and it was, it was working before the flood.
Right.
And afterwards looked like it had rolled over 4 times, you know, on the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
That's how powerful that water was.
Jeez. I was going to ask you, did you ever get a chance to actually meet Gary Cobb in the community, or is that more or less the legend that most people were just talking about?
No, I never got to meet Gary Cobb. It was, you know, Gary is sort of like this like home haunt legend.
Yeah.
In the haunt community, and he passed away 2016, something like that. I never got to meet him.
Mm-hmm. How did you find that footage that was in the doc? Is that supply?
So that was shot by a company that no longer exists. Through Ted Doherty, we were trying to track down the guy who shot it, and we never could.
Okay.
It was on, if you go to, let me actually look up the website. If you go to, oh, goodness gracious. What is his website? If you go to his website, that footage is there. Is it hauntinggrounds.com? Yeah. So hauntinggrounds.org. Because his haunt was the Hallowed Haunting Grounds.
Okay.
So if you go to hauntinggrounds.org, I think is the website. There's a whole bunch of information about, you know, his haunt and things like that. And there's a bunch of other video there. And, you know, we contacted everybody and basically just was able to use the footage. And, you know, some of it, like those interviews were just, you know, nobody owned it anymore. It was just sort of lost in the ether of usage.
Yeah.
And so we did a whole lot of work to actually, there's string music that was originally behind the interviews. We did a ton of work to actually remove all of that music and just keep the interview, so that we could get it, because it was really important to have that in the doc. And it was really kind of sweet, you know, the clip we used. I really hoped that when people watch it, they take it as sort of Gary giving them a little bit of motivational advice in the middle of the doc. Like, hey, you know, you can do this. Just try. Anybody can do this. Anybody is a haunter. Anybody can be a haunter. And that's sort of the notion of the doc, right? If you look at the definition at the beginning, the definition of a haunter is literally just, do you like scary things? Yes, cool.
Right.
You're a haunter.
Yeah, like it doesn't take much. You're already in the community, actually.
Yeah, well, and that was, you know, the sort of the genesis of the definitions that separate each act in the film. We're trying to rack our brain of like, okay, we always knew we wanted to start with 2016, and we always knew we wanted to just kind of jump into 2016. We didn't want to wait to show the haunts, right?
Right.
So, and you can't show the haunt and then like backtrack and show the same haunt being built, because you already know what it's going to be. You can show parts of it, right, to get like a behind the scenes thing, which we do of like you see the dragon, you see the underskin of the dragon,
right,
and you hopefully can see that it was the caterpillar. You hopefully can kind of see the caterpillar shape in the dragon, you know, that kind of thing. But we really wanted to show 2016 and just sort of jump in so that those who open the doc not knowing what it is and just go, I just want to see haunts. see haunts, and then those who maybe don't know what it is kind of go, oh, okay, I get it. And then you slowly start peeling away the layers as to who they are and what this is and the community and what it goes through, so that when you then get to the third act, which is then Halloween 2017, you sort of know what you're getting into. So hopefully the idea is the beginning you go, oh, okay, I know what this is. Then by the beginning of the third act you go, oh, it's not what I thought it was. And then you get to see it again with new appreciation.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Like that was the idea, right?
No, that's a really good idea. And it's something that, a lot of these other documentaries on haunts haven't really done. Like they'll kind of focus on, people making them, and that's kind of really about it. Whereas I feel like this one, like you said, it kind of shows you the community. And if you're not aware of it, you're like, oh, I've seen little haunted houses built around my neighborhood. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a community. There's a convention. Wait, these people get together now? And then it's like, okay, I get it. This is cool. Like, I never even knew this existed. I want to find out more, be a part of this.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully that's the case. And then, we always knew we wanted to end it with somebody young, right?
Passing the torch. Yes.
Passing the torch, exactly. And in LA, there's two haunters. There's Sam from Opeachy, and then I'm blanking on her name. I'm sorry if you're listening, from Murder House Productions. She did in 2017. She did a trick or treat from the movie.
The Mike Dougherty film, yes.
Yeah. Themed haunt, and it was like mind-blowing, like universal status quality. And people were like, holy mother. And she's like 17 or 16 or something, or 19, 18. She's really young, right?
Yeah.
And so it was always like, okay, it's Sam and her. Can we get them both in the film? And we went and interviewed Sam. And here's how fast we worked. We interviewed Sam the summer before the film came out.
Okay.
So we were interviewing him, and 3 months later the film was out. Wow. Like, that's how fast we were trying to get this done, right?
Slap it on a lunchbox and you're selling it. You're selling it.
Basically. Nice Jurassic Park reference. What was it? You package it and you do it. Yeah. No, you sell it. You want to sell it. Freaking Goldblum. Okay. Jeez. So we always want to get both, and we just ran out of time. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, if we have a sequel, I know how we're starting it.
Right. There you go.
But yeah, we always wanted to end it with the future, and to see somebody young who is, maybe has a little bit fresher of a take that isn't grounded in the way things have been done, to see, okay, well, what are you doing and what are they gravitating towards? And like Sam, he's so young. In 2017, he was 16 years old. And like one of my favorite lines, probably my favorite line in the entire film, is Sam. And he goes, I don't have like a job.
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, because I don't think you could legally work yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I know all these other haunters are going to work and they have money for these things. Like,
or they're retired. Like, yeah, and he's getting his allowance and birthday money and stuff. But the stuff he gravitates towards where it's interactive, or it's experiences you go through by yourself. It's interesting, at least to me, to go, okay, so that's where the younger brand, like the generation who's about to go into design school, who 5-10 years from now, they're going to be the ones designing haunts. Like, that's what they're interested in now. So it's interesting to see, okay, like, that's where we're going. And it just so happened to work out that Greg Packard and Pam and his brother Donovan were doing interactive stuff in their haunt in 2017. Which was an ingenious idea. They had these little boxes, to explain for anyone who hasn't seen the film, they have these little boxes, and they're just RFID, they're infrared receivers. That's all they are. And so there's just little infrared lights throughout the haunt, and as you're moving around with this box, it'll receive a signal, and it'll tell the box, the box has a vibrator in it, and that sounded dirty. It has
go on.
The box has a thing that makes it vibrate. Wow. Okay. Back up. Move on. And it's got a light meter, so like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or whatever it was. And basically, at certain rooms, it would, the strength of the box and the lights would go, to number 4, number 5. And it was supposed to be like, oh, there's a ghost present in this room. Your ghost detector is going off. But they geniusly made it go off at just random times.
Mm-hmm.
So there were like 1 or 2 rooms where it would actually go off, where there was a scare actor there. But then every other time, it's just going
in a hallway.
off.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so you're like, and nothing happens. And it's interesting to see that sort of interactivity coming, down the line. And I'm what they did the year after, with this whole time travel thing. I wish we would have filmed them, because they did an entire time travel scenario where you actually went back in time, and the tech they had was amazing. So really quick, because I know I've been talking for a while, but the side note, so that haunt, Restless, you got me talking about this stuff. Restless Souls Manor is really, really cool as far as their story, and they're the only ones that really do this that I know of, where each year they change the haunt, but it's the same story. What I mean is they have a 200-year story that they've created, and each haunt is like a 1 or 2 year snippet out of that 200-year
It's their
story.
Game of Thrones.
Basically, right? So, which, don't say anything. I'm only at season 7.5.
Oh yeah, no, you're good.
Spoilers. Anybody watching is like, what? But yeah, I just started watching it like a month and a half ago, so I've been binging it.
Oh my god! But yeah, it's their epic long story, and they tell it every year. Parts.
And so the last year was this time travel story where you went in modern times and you time traveled back to, I think it was like the 20s, when an evil doctor was living in the manor, because it's Restless Souls Manor. It's all about this house, and so you got to experience the house in the time of the doctor. And then the year before that was you were experiencing it in modern day, as like the house is decrepit and alone, and you're going in as ghost investigators, paranormal investigators.
Wow.
And then the year before that, you were going in like the 1700s, and a coven of witches had appeared or were in the house, and there were witch hunters there trying to hunt the witches in the 1700s, and you were like there with them. And it's just it's insane. It's like, Greg works at a hospital. Like, he's not a designer. He's not a filmmaker. Like,
this is stuff that doesn't even show up at Horror Nights.
That's what I mean. Well, I mean, Horror Nights in Florida, right, is probably the best example I could give. Where you've got what is the insane asylum that keeps showing up? That like Jack is like his brother was in, and then Jack was in it, and they keep reusing this.
Oh right, yeah, the penitentiary, yeah.
And then like all of Horror Nights is supposed to take place in that one town in, was it Ohio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's the closest thing I can think of where they're sort of loosely tying everything together, right? But this is like legit tying it together. Like, it's one story, and they're just going to keep going with it. It's genius. It's absolute genius.
Like, people want to know, they want to come back every year and see how like this story unfolds on top of just going into a fun haunt in general. Like, right. I mean, in the end, like, what is a haunted house? Well, it's a house that's gone through so much shit.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. Like with their haunt, people will come out going, "Oh man, like we went through the house," and it's like, no, you went through their side yard, their backyard, and their garage.
Yeah, you didn't even go through their living room.
You were nowhere in there, and they completely trick you. And because it's unlike, you go into, like, not to bash on like Horror Nights, but you go into like Horror Nights, right? And you go into a bedroom, and it's like, yeah, it's a bedroom, but it's like a 5 foot by 7 foot bedroom with a twin bed that's been cut in half.
Yeah, to give you the illusion that you're in that room, right? Right.
No, their stuff is full size, so it's like, oh no, this is clearly one of the bedrooms in your house. So it's like, no, this is the third car garage.
That's crazy.
It's genius what these guys are doing, and hopefully we did them justice by, with the film, and hopefully people will then get to see it. Maybe they'll be inspired and get to, like Greg says, the whole film really does hound on what Greg says, where it's, if they can just inspire one person to go out and do it, they're satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're continuing the legacy, and this is like the best way that you could really, share that with the rest of the world. Like I said, I'm sure half these people don't even know that this is out there,
Yeah.
This is really...
No, we have a vast audience who has no idea that we exist. Epic Haunts exists.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we got to keep spreading it. I mean, one of the things I really did enjoy, I know we got to wrap up here in a second, is that, you guys touched a little bit on the extreme haunts, and I know that's kind of like a competitor right now.
A little bit.
Yeah, and, I want to get your take. What do you think about these terrifying, spit in your face, bury you, but belittle you for actual money Whereas, like like you said, the other haunt is giving you a donation for food to help the community.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's such a juxtaposition, right? Like, you've got Beware the Dark Realm, where he tells a story about a 90-year-old woman going through the haunt and basically, like, loving it.
Right.
And then the other one, you've got, the other type haunts, like the one unfortunate haunt that I won't even mention by name, has Navy SEALs going through it who apparently have never been able to make it through the experience, which is just, like, insane. It's... what we say in the film is accurately depicts the way I personally feel about it as well, where it's not my thing. Yeah. I would never want to do it. Now, the ones where, like, you've got little, like, 9-volt shocker gloves or whatever, like that kind of stuff, whatever. I would probably maybe do that, right? Yeah. But never to the level where it's like, or like the ones where it's like, hey, we're going to put a cloth bag over your head to go into the space and then take the bag off just so you don't know where you are, and then you go through the haunt. That stuff I think is fine.
Yeah, just adding another level.
Yeah, I'm more, that kind of stuff for me is always, I'm a little bit more germophobic about, like, did you clean that bag from the last person? Did they sneeze in this? And then you put it on my head? Like, that's more terrifying to me than anything else.
For sure.
But, like, as far as, we were very specific in the doc. I think we gave it like 4.5 minutes or something like that, maybe 5 minutes. And there's no images. We don't cut to any footage of any extreme haunt. We do that very specifically.
Right, it's not what this one's about.
Right, it was a very on-purpose decision to have them talk about it. The music goes very, very low. It's very, very bassy. Everyone talks about it. We really wanted to hound on the way a large group of the community feels that when you get to a level of extreme where it becomes, like what Rick West says, supervised torture, when it gets to that level, there's a very... I would say, from my experience, probably 90% of the haunt community, I could be wrong, but in my experience, it's about 90% of the haunt community doesn't believe that that's haunting.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that one, because it's I think the horror fans and the ones that go to these horror conventions and Midsummer Scream, that they enjoy Halloween. They enjoy the happy faces. We enjoy laughing at a horror movie and being scared at the same time, and just knowing you had a good experience. Whereas I think, like you said, it's like these Navy SEAL type people, and like, all the girlfriends and guys that get together and see how strong and awesome they are to go, I could do this waiver and sign it off and have people spit in my face and push me, and it's like, that's not what Halloween's about for us.
No, it's it's a supervised torture experience. It's a supervised terror experience, is what it is.
Right.
And I think it's a natural progression of the haunted attraction. I mean, if you look at, we were lucky enough to get footage from some of the, wasn't the JCs, some of the old haunts that, like, the church groups were doing. I was lucky enough to track down some film footage from the 80s that a bunch of kids shot for their school, and they ended up giving us rights to that footage, which is what you see in the doc, where we're talking about, Not Scary Farm and a bunch of other stuff. But if you look at that footage, it's rooms with cardboard tombstones, maybe a table, and somebody fakely, like, working on a zombie or a Frankenstein monster, but nobody's really jumping out. There's no, crash cans. There's no blasting music. There's none of that stuff. There's maybe a strobe light in a, striped room. Right. I think the natural progression is, as it gets, you go through that and you go, okay, I'm fine with that. Well, what's next? It just leads to where we're at. And I hope we're at a threshold where it's like, okay, we've hit that. We're done now. We're done with it. Now it's just going to get a little bit more interactive. The detail is going to get higher. It's going to become more hyper real, like puppets at Horror Nights, like every got 53 puppets in it. But those puppets are like stupid real. Like, remember we went through the American Werewolf in London maze.
Oh, yes.
And they had the wolf puppets, and my wife hated them to the point where she would hold back. She'd wait for it to go off, and then she would literally jump through the room to miss the puppet. While at the time I'm just standing there in the corner watching the puppet going, come on, come out again.
Right. Like,
turn the light on. I want to see
this
it.
Experience. Right.
So I mean, it's I think Shay says something like, it is what it is. Some people like it, and it's not my thing, it's not my experience, but there are people. If people didn't want it and weren't paying for it, they wouldn't exist.
Right.
But they do. People are paying for it. People want it, and it is what it is. I think it's unfortunate that then becomes, because that is so not graphic but so sensational, right? That people who don't know any better see that and go, "Oh, that's what haunting is," when that's not what the bulk of haunting is. 99% of haunting is not that. And that's one of the things with what we tried to do with our film, is to go, look, this is what haunting is.
For sure. Yeah, I've spoken to, a few people at Universal Creative, and, I've talked with them year after year about, them pushing the limits. They've always thrown around the idea of having an extreme haunt. But it's like, when you get to that theme park level, how many waivers that are going to have to get signed and how much trouble goes into, this is now an NBC corporation. Do you really want to have somebody break their leg or their neck, on your property? Like, it's just not worth it. So putting your efforts towards just really good detail and replicating American Werewolf in London, Poltergeist, like, that's the stuff that people really want to see. Compared to just how insane this thing can get. Drive out in the middle of a field in Maine and you might find some kind of extreme crazy haunt if that's for you and your thing,
or you're going to have a house of the October built experience where you get, spoiler alert, there's some burial stuff that happens.
Right, yeah. Which I love that film because, those two films, because it's cool to see like someone else kind of taking those experiences and like you show us. I don't want to do these things, but you can show us.
Yeah. And speaking of like the detail and stuff, I mean, it's the same experience like we had when we went into AVP years ago at Horror Nights, and you got I don't know if did they have AVP in Orlando as well?
Yes.
Alien vs. Predator. Okay, so at least in Hollywood, the last room you walk into, and there's like a 25-foot queen alien.
Yeah, they built the full size alien. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you're just like, wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
And you just stand there staring at it for a while the shrouded cast members are like, leave, get out. And you're like, no, I will not leave. There's an alien right there.
Yeah, like I need to stay focused on this a little longer. They've done, I know there was a VR house the other year where you paid a little bit of money and you got to wear like a backpack and you could see the other people wearing the backpacks next to you inside this haunt. And it was kind of like just a demo trying out thing. So they're always trying new and different things. Yeah. I mean, years ago, there was a house inside one of the old Islands of Adventure kind of show rides where like they gave you it was going through a mine and you had a helmet with like the mine light on it, and it was kind of like your friend's haunt where it's like you go past the sensor and then the light starts blinking and stuff. But it became when did those RF things go off at the right time? They were just blinking on and off randomly all the time. And then of course you had to wear a hairnet because, like you said, sanitary reasons, and that got so gross because now you have to hire somebody to clean those things every 5 seconds. And yeah, I think it just comes back to having focus on the experience. Try to build a world that you're entering, and focus on the scares, and that's really all you need in the end.
The best thing I can point to where I really hope the haunted attraction industry goes is, for a while there, at least the way I saw it from the good pun for what I'm about to say, the way I saw it from was when Saw came out. That was sort of the beginning of the
torture.
I don't know,
era.
like the gore decade, right? Yes. And I feel like we're leaving that. Although Chris Rock is rebooting Saw, so who knows what's going to happen?
Bousman, yeah.
But I really hope we go in The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix show, where I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, desperately need to watch it. It's one of, if not, in my opinion, the best horror story of, maybe the last 20 years.
Easily. It blows every season of American Horror Story away because it's an actual horror story.
It is.
That
but it's
episode.
Slow. Yeah. And it's there's no, there's little bits of gore, but there isn't. It's just, there's a couple of jump scares, but not really. You're really involved in the characters and the story and the experience. And I really hope that's where the haunted attraction industry goes.
Definitely, like where you're kind of going through this, luxurious type haunted looking mansion, but it's not that there's a scare every 4 steps. That's what gets you. Is that it's the lighting, it's the atmosphere, it's the unsettlement until when you do get scared, then it hits you.
Well, and that's where you look at what Sam did, Sam Kittleman from O-Pee-Chee, the year that we filmed in 2018. We only got a little bit of taste of his haunt, but he did a Donnie Darko haunt, which we couldn't 100% show because it's Donnie Darko, right? But you go through alone, and it's really slow. Where you're just, there's a couple of foot sensors and things where it'll strobe lights will come off, whatever. But it's very, very slow, and you go through one at a time by yourself, and then you turn a corner, and it's a completely dark hallway. It's pitch black, and you've got to sort of feel your way down the hall. And then at one point you hit a sensor and a light slowly turns on and the rabbit just lunges at you.
Oh my God.
And then you turn into another dark hallway. But it was like 3/4 of it was just this slow burn of looking at all the detail and all the lights. And then all of a sudden you were just pitch black by yourself. And then the scare was a light bulb and a guy in a rabbit suit. But it was one of the most effective, terrifying scares I've ever seen in a haunted attraction. And it's from a 16-year-old kid who built it for a weekend at Midsummer Scream.
Oh, my God.
Right?
Really? Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. I've had an experience like that, but it was not on purpose. The Shane Morton, the guys that make Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell out in Atlanta, they have this giant FX warehouse, this entire hotel complex just went under. Okay. And so they were able to acquire all these rooms for his makeup studio. And if you go to my YouTube page, you can see I kind of went through with the video camera and they let me film in there. But while they let me film in there, it's like a maze, and you go through the Creature from the Black Lagoon and the Mummy, and there's all this old, almost House of a Thousand Corpses, redneck dolls laying in the one area, or a doll monster and stuff. So it's all just kind of weird and creepy and blacklit. And they're trying to turn it into a museum type thing. Well, while I'm going through, the power literally shuts off to where there's only a few accent lights, and I'm like, haha, funny. And then I realize it's maybe that wasn't them, and I'm like, who the fuck? I've only been here once. Type thing, and I literally shit 10 bricks and ran through the rest of that thing so fast to where I showed up, and it was literally just a power sensor thing. They forgot I was back there, so when I showed up and they just saw me run into the room with light with all them, and I was just white as a ghost because I was so terrified. But that's real horror, that when you go through a haunt and it's just unsettling, and then when those lights go out and you're alone, it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, I think the film that really encapsulates this, and I know we've been we need to stop, and it's we're still going.
It's fine.
The film that I think really hit this on the head was the It remake.
Yes.
It hit that Hollywood blockbuster status film with enough nostalgia with the kids and the bikes in the 80s, with enough of that sort of creepy, weird, under your skin, slow burn that, I don't know, I saw it and I was like, okay, all right, I'm in. You guys did it. You did it so well. And like I said, I really hope that's where we go. I hope we leave, Annabelle behind.
Please, God, even though there's a third one coming out. Let it be the last.
Yeah, except the third one's got Patrick Wilson and I can't remember her name. What is her name? Who plays Elizabeth Warren?
Farrah Flamingo.
Yes. Whose sister is an American Horror Story. It's funny. I didn't know they were related.
I know. I thought it was her daughter. No,
that's what I thought, and I was like, huh? Anywho, side note. They're in it, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's gonna be more like The Conjuring, because I really like the Conjuring films. They're kind of cheesy and they're kind of silly, but they're popcorn horror, but good popcorn horror.
Oh, for sure. That first Conjuring film really, got a lot of people, and it brought back that poltergeist feeling that movies had kind of lost for a while.
There's 2 shots from James Wan movies that have kind of gotten under my skin, and it's the opening of the first Insidious, where it goes through, hit my mic. You do the upside down reveal in the kid's bedroom, and then you go through the kitchen, and there's just the woman in black looking through the screen, and then it just sort of fades out. Just that weird somebody looking in for some reason got under my skin. And then the shot in The Conjuring where just before the witch jumps off the wardrobe onto the girl, and it does this like real quick dolly into her face. I don't know why, but just that shot just tripped me the hell out. The rest of the film, I was like, "Oh, this is totally fine." That one shot, but I really
he gets
think
unsettlement. He understands that.
And I think it goes back to what we've been talking about, where you don't need the extreme,
the saw
things
hostile
anymore.
Stuff in your face, right?
There was a time for that where heavy metal and a buzzsaw was cool. And I mean, we're still seeing it, I guess. You've got, what is the film that came out? I can't remember. It's got the clown, wears black and white makeup.
Oh, Terrifier?
Yeah. Where like you're seeing some of that stuff come back, but I think they're doing it in new ways where it's slow and unsettling, and and
I think people just miss a good slasher, so they're like, hey, this is the best way to do it, even though it's low budget. It's like, hey, we just made a slasher and we're just going to make these movies because somebody needs them.
Yeah, well, isn't American Horror Story this year slasher?
Yes, it's going to be a slasher this year, so yeah, but yeah, no, I feel like you're right. Like the James Wan thing, like, you're looking at a framed scene and you're watching it and you're like, oh, I don't see and then you realize it's in the top right-hand corner staring at you the entire time. That's truly terrifying.
Yeah. And, as cheesy as our little short films are that we try to make, we did one called On a Christmas Night, like last year. It was like a weekend thing. Like we just got together and we're like, let's make a horror film. Nice. I don't know if you stumbled upon that one.
No, I'll have to.
We actually had honorable mention at some horror festival up here. I think it was Famous Monsters Magazine had a horror festival, and we were like, we made the film in 2 days. We were like, whatever.
Yeah,
and so we submitted it, and they were like, honorable mention. I was like, sick.
Nice.
But like we did stuff in there, and only one person's caught it. Where like, the little creature is like just in the back, in the shadows, just there the whole time.
Right.
And only one person I've seen review it going, oh, did you see that thing? It was over there. And it's been there for like 40 seconds and you just now caught it.
Oh my God.
Like, it's actually here. It's audio podcast, but it's this little guy right here.
That thing is truly terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I will definitely put a picture of that for the podcast so people know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just this little guy, and then there's the Epic Home Monster. But yeah, like, I mean, it's funny because these are super simple. Like, that's just a foam head wrapped in canvas. And then this guy up here, this little demon guy up here, is another foam head with trash bags that I heat shrunk onto his face. You know what I mean? Like, it's super simple stuff that, I learned this stuff from the Haunters.
Right. Yeah,
and
now once you learn that stuff, you're like, well, I got to do something with this knowledge now.
Yeah, and I'm stealing their tricks from my little short films. But
yeah, well, there you go. That's our wraparound back from the beginning. If you learn it, you might as well just do something with this knowledge.
I agree.
Yeah,
I guess that does make me a haunter at that point, right? Because I mean, we say like if you enjoy Halloween, so I have Halloween decorations up in the other room in the living room out there. So
very nice.
Yeah.
Well, Josh Quillin, thank you so much for doing this episode of the Every Day is Halloween podcast. I feel like you are Every Day is Halloween. You're part of that community over the West Coast.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
For sure. The Epic Home Haunts documentary is out right now. You can get it on Amazon and iTunes. And hopefully a hard copy soon, ?
That requires a distributor. I ain't got the money to make that many copies of a film. So, yeah, if there's any distributors listening, we are totally into discussing potential.
There you go. Well, Josh, I don't think this is the last I'll hear of you on the show. We would love to have you back later on for whatever you're doing in the future.
That would be awesome.
Cool. All right. Until next time, I'm Horror Guy Keenan. Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you.
Heard strange noises coming from a house on the hill, so I crept up to the window and looked over the sill. My heart almost stopped, I nearly died of fright. By the dim candlelight I saw the strangest sight. There was Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman too, dancing with some zombies, what a ghastly crew. Viola the vampire was doing the bop, and everything was rocking at the monster's pop. lion and the moon was full. The crazy witch doctor was dancing with a ghoul. The organ was playing, but no one was there. And the headless horseman was combing his hair. There was Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman too, dancing with some zombies, what a ghastly crew. Viola the vampire was doing the pop, and everything was rocking at the monster's hop. I can't forget that empty house up on the hill. The night I saw the monsters dancing, ooh, what a thrill. The wind did howl, the night was black. I nearly lost my mind, I'm never ever going back. There was Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman too, dancing with some zombies, what a ghastly crew. Viola the vampire was doing the bop, and everything was rocking at the monster's hop.